Everybody, thank you so much for coming today. We'll get started. We have two awesome members of Congress here who are at home, and so we want to get them opportunity to talk to us about what they're working on and talk to their respective friends and their plans. So thank you all. Good morning and welcome to today's briefing, Investing Kids. On behalf of First Focus on Children, 0 to 3 and Children's Defense Fund, I want to thank you all for being here today. We are honored today to host a conversation in cooperation with the chairs of the Congressional Dad's Caucus, Congressional Mom's Caucus, and the Congressional Baby Caucus. So our first speaker serves as chair of the Congressional Baby Caucus, Congresswoman Rosa DeLauro, who is an awesome champion for children for ever and ever in Congress. As ranking member of the Appropriations Committee, she understands the importance of investing in kids and how these investments are frequently at risk. A long-time advocate of child care, nutrition, and family economic security, her commitment to the child tax credit, both in the American Rescue Plan and the reintroduction of the American Family Act, will be life-changing for billions of children. Congresswoman, thank you so much for being here and for your dedication to kids.
Thank you. Hello to everyone this afternoon. Thank you so much, Bruce. Your kind words and your generous introduction. That really it's humbling. So it's been wonderful to be here. And your work as president of First Focus and what you do in terms of making sure that children and families are front and center in our federal policy and budget decisions over the years. So just to point out that First Focus really has been a force for making children a priority. So I am so grateful for their support of the American Family Act and the Child Tax Credit, to make it simple for you. So Deborah Johnson, Deputy Assistant Secretary for External Affairs and HHS's Administration for Children and Families, going to present, as I understand, an overview of ACS programs supporting children and families and the impact our investments are having on our communities. Let me also recognize those participating in today's panel. Michelle Delacroix, Senior Vice President of Budget and Tax at First Focus. 0 to 3 Senior Director of Policy, Patty Cole, who will be sharing the top line results from their upcoming babies in the budget report. You know, many years ago, I asked to get a copy of in the UK when Tony Blair was the Prime Minister. Their budgets have carried the effect of the budget on children for many years, and it's something that we should move to act to do to make sure that we can catalog what we are doing and what effect it is having on our children. I might also add, with regard to Patty, she served as staff for a dear friend, mentor, someone I worked for years, Senator Christopher Dodd, when he was the chair of the Senate Health Subcommittee on Children and Families. Casey Peaks, Director of Federal Policy at the Children's Defense Fund. It's such an organization, the Children's Defense Fund, who along with her team is fighting to make sure that every child has what they need in order to be able to thrive. And I must thank all the members and supporters of First Focus on Children, the Children's Defense Fund, 0 to 3, all who are gathered here today for this briefing, which celebrates Father's Day and Children's Week as we focus on the importance of investing in our children and supporting the well-being of our country's youngest population. And this is on the domestic side. I was just reading reports and trying to get UNICEF, if you will, and this is internationally, to see if they can move to aggregate their data on the amount of funding that is spent on young children, you know, kids under 6 and so forth. And some of the stuff that I've been reading is that there's a focus on education, but it's in the later years. So we're going to try to see, and we got in some part of the USAID budget, we got language in talking about trying to get that information about young kids and need to focus on that. Obviously, our priority for us is to get our kids in the U.S. taken care of and our youngest children I just have to say to my colleagues, Congressman Jimmy Gomez, he's chair of the Congressional Dads Caucus, born out of a simple idea. Dads need to be part of advancing policies that will make a difference in the lives of parents across the country and being an advocate for babies. Now, we've got the iconic picture of him on the floor with his baby in the sling here, which is wonderful. And Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, chairman of the Congressional Mamas Caucus, and she is a formidable mom. Rashida, thanks for being here today, for all the work in your advocacy across this country. She understands the cost of raising a child in our country. That cost is amongst the highest in the world, and that oftentimes our policies leave working families, vulnerable families behind. I think I've been chair of the Baby Caucus since, was it 2009? I think it's 2009. I'm so proud to join you to really provide the first look at the upcoming Babies in the Budget report. Every year examines the spending we deny on infants and toddlers, highlights the most recent successes that federal investments are making, discusses what our next steps need to be to continue our commitment to kids across the country during this appropriations process. And it is going to be a wild appropriations process if we're keeping up with the news here. So, what the House majority has proposed for the allocations for, I'll just be clear, and I hope no one is offended, it's shameful. The allocations that are being proposed. We are looking at numbers. The first thought was they were going to go to the 2022 budget and to extrapolate those numbers to 2024. That would have been $140 billion in the cut. Now, and they signed a budget deal from which they are walking away from, and now are going even below in some areas that 2022. We are looking at that could be $159 billion in cuts, or it could be $189 billion, up to 30% or more in cuts to some of the programs. I'll just mention labor, health, education, human services to you. That budget will be slashed by $60.2 billion. $60.2 billion. This leads to 200,000 less children enrolled in parents lose access to childcare for at least, it's over 105,000 kids. The depths of the cuts and the impact on our communities is unfathomable. It really is. Now, I view my job as to make it understood to our members and also to the American public about what is happening here. As ranking member of the House Appropriations Committee, you have my word. I'm going to fight like hell. I really am, to ensure that families have the resources that they need to thrive, which is what we try to do as chair, because you know the data as well as I. Research has shown that investing in kids, and especially at an early age, not only supports their health, development, and well-being, it also contributes to their success in their future. Not just the right thing to do, it's the smart thing to do as well. Investing in our children benefits the economy. It produces returns upwards of $7 in savings for every single dollar spent. And so many people today struggle. They're going from paycheck to paycheck. They're struggling to make ends meet. So this is an investment that is worth making. In 2021, working with my colleagues and so many of you in this room, I was proud to finally pass the expanded and improved child tax credit and to see President Biden sign it into law. It was the largest tax cut for working families in generations. It was a lifeline to the middle class. It was helping working families, the most vulnerable families, and it lifted half of our nation's children out of poverty. led to a 26% decline in hunger in families with children. So we were able, through this expansion and improving the child tax credit, that kept nearly 4 million children out of poverty. I just will say this one thing. I've been in the Congress for 32 years. I have never seen a federal program succeed in its mission in such a short period of time with what it was wanting to accomplish accomplished every single day. Unfortunately, that progress reversed when it expired. That needs to be reinstated, and we're doing that now. And I might add, I'm very, very proud of our Democratic caucus, because after electing the Speaker, House Republicans, their first order of business, or it's not just the Republicans, it's Democrats. When you take on the majority, the first order of business is you put a rules package forward. And I was so proud that our Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries, offered the motion to commit that would have added the expanded child care tax credit. And so it was clear. It was clear to us and to myself, but to the country, that this policy is a flagship. It is the #1 priority for House Democrats. It's taken 18 years. Damn it, it's okay. As long as we're going to do it, that's the issue. So reinstating the monthly expanded and improved child tax credit would help families deal with inflation. It really is financial stability. We are now, including myself, 210 strong on the bill which we just introduced to make it permanent. We got 212 members. I got to find the other two and find out why they don't. So this is the CTC will lift all Americans up so that they can do what our job is to do here, and what the nation's mission is to do, is to really have people realize their dreams, their aspirations, and a promise of opportunity for people in this country. I can't thank you enough for being here. We cannot do it without the advocacy of all of you. You are really the wind beneath our wings here, and you're focusing on these critical issues. So I ask you to please keep up the good work to all of the advocates. Congress is an institution that responds to external pressure. You are that external pressure. Be loud, be clear. And my mom, who died 5 years ago at age 103, served in politics all of her life. She taught me many things, but 2 principles. Don't take no for an answer, and never give up. So I'm counting on you not to take no for an answer. I know you will never give up. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here. Labor HHS that plays a role, and you're going to look at all these areas, and you're going to take a look when we get this job of what their plans are to cut back. And now you're going to hear from the Congressional mamas. Great Congressional mamas. I'm going to dash for a train.
Yes, absolutely. But I know Congresswoman Tlaib also needs to, so I just want to offer the answer of the introduction of it. So just like Congresswoman DeLauro, is an amazing champion for kids and for moms, and so we really want to welcome her today. She's been critical on a whole variety of issues, and you know that she works on issues around healthcare, so maternal health, the rising cost of raising children, family leave. So the whole thing, one of the things I just want to say is we really appreciate that their office really looks at these issues from a holistic point of view. So it's not just the maternal child health thing, which is enormously important, but it's all the other issues that are important to them. So thank you so much, Congresswoman, for being here.
Thank you, Bruce, and thank you all so much for being here. It's such an important issue. First focus, Children's Defense Fund 0 to 3 for convening this really important discussion and conversation, which gives credibility for myself and Rosa and so many others that continue to want to move with the urgency that's needed. You're going to hear from the Dad's Caucus representative, Jimmy Gomez, who I love dearly. I told him, I can't believe I created the Mama's Caucus. And it was just like, okay. But then when he created the Dad's Caucus, like New York Times called me and said, can you tell me about the Dad's Caucus? And why do you think it's important? And I said, because y'all never called me when the Mama's Caucus got created. You called me when the Dad's Caucus got created. And he's always like, I'm not sure how to take that. but I think it's just telling why I think having fathers at the table. In Michigan, 17.8% of children live in poverty. The cost of raising a child in our country are among the highest in the world, continue to rise. I read that families with children under 5 pay child care spend about 10% of their family income, which is 40% higher than the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services definition of affordability. And you all know that infant mortality rate amongst Black families are twice as high than any other families. And you all know I was born and raised in the most beautiful Blackest city in the country, the city of Detroit. What best prepared me probably for public service is I'm the eldest of 14. I have 7 younger brothers, 6 younger children, 6 younger sisters. They are like my children. And honestly, it really best prepared me for this lived experience and various challenges that you go through from a child being born with disability to a number of other issues, learning disabilities, you name it. It really, again, opened my eyes again to the importance of having federal government be so laser focused on making sure that all of our children are able to thrive. You know, this is unacceptable to see the infant mortality rate, to see the cost of taking care of a child in our country to rise. And our most vulnerable populations are really at the front lines. As the founder and chair of the Congressional Mama's Caucus in partnership with organizations like Mother Justice in Michigan, we truly believe that no child or family should live in poverty in the wealthiest country on earth. No family should go without their basic needs. And the Mama's Caucus is about the fact that we've had so much policy about mothers, but not with mothers. And so we want to change that. We want moms on the table, talking about the importance of paid leave, talking about the importance of even investing in IDEA Act, which is, helping make sure that we're fully funding education funding for our children with special needs. I also, worked in the nonprofit sector for over 10 years and been on the front lines where, I had a mother come to me and say, the early childhood education program closed down and how, she was in tears and I kept saying, I'm going to find you a different program. She goes, you don't understand. That's where my children eat twice a day. This is to understand fully that it's not early childhood programs, it's everything and above, and that's why we always look at all of the different issues around it. Too often our policies and our social safety nets continue to leave our children, and especially families of color, behind. We must build policies that support every single person at every stage of their life. I want to, thank President Biden and his administration executive actions. Announcing these actions a few months ago are a welcome investment in the care economy, and people are now talking about it in a way I think that is very important. And again, making sure that our budget is centered on our nation's families and our children. When I continue to see how popular many of the things you're going to be talking about today is, I just don't understand why it hasn't, reached any of my colleagues, maybe because I'm new and I came here and I'm seeing the ground running, but as Gracie Fox, as a young organizer, used to tell me, Trey, that transformative and meaningful change doesn't happen. Congress has happened in the streets, the candidate meeting, organizing, working wallers is what's going to lead to that transformative change. In the Mama's Caucus, we are fighting for moms every single day. I love that they instantly, as soon as they walk into a room, I don't care if it's Glamour magazine convening us, Bruce, or anything, they humanize the everyday challenges and issues that are happening. Because even as you talk about the study and everything and the numbers, which is important, many colleagues want the numbers. I like, the number to see the urgency of moving people. But when they talk about literally, shame, this kind of shame that they weren't able to really get it done, it's not their fault. I always have to remind the moms in the room, it's not your fault. These safety nets are not where they need to be. Earned income tax credit used to be one of the most effective, and is still effective, but it was one of the most effective anti-poverty. It's not working as it should now, and that's why we introduced the Child Poverty Act, which really piggies back on child tax credit expansion. It makes it much easier. I see earned income tax credit, literally money staying on the table because people have to file a form. They, don't qualify to file a federal income tax return. And so if you don't do it, the money stays at the table. And so we got to really work hard in trying to figure out ways to make it easier for our families. You all know our policy priorities need to center around true affordable childcare, 12 weeks of family medical leave as a national standard, reproductive justice, care, and last but not least, equitable access to basic needs such as housing and utilities. There is no doubt that investing in our infants and youth through early childhood education, affordable childcare, nutrition, all of it, will lead to safe and full quality of life. I also helped start the Get the Let Out Caucus, and I want you all to know it's not only about, I would say to the president, we can't build back better if our children are being poisoned with dirty water. And it's not just, it's all over. There's not one congressional district that doesn't have a lead issue in water. And our children cannot thrive, the brain is not developed properly if they're being exposed. It's not just lead anymore, it's up to 12 different contaminants. But even in this, knowing that some of them are paying such a huge amount of money for water that's not even clean, and even hearing stories in my own district of mothers getting their children ripped away from them because they have a water shut off, that they're shut off, the water shut off. The fact that our system and program that the system is in place that you're going to take the child away instead of helping her pay for water that is increasing cost by 400% nationwide. It is again, these are why all of these issues, as you talk about it, is so important. As again, the chair of the Mama's Caucus and lead sponsor in Child Heritage Act, I know that our families and our children are so thankful and they can't wait, thankful for all of you, and they can't wait for more studies. I say this because I love this, and again, it gives credibility and everything, but my folks tell me this all the time at town halls. How much time are you going to study housing crisis? How much time? No, really, how much are you going to study the cost of living? We're tired of being studied, Rashida. We know that Black children are dying at a higher rate. We already know that Black maternal health is happening. Why? How much more do they need to actually do real investments in our communities? So I say that because, again, for me, let's make sure that we're moving with that sense of urgency that our families deserve, and it's so critical. The Mama's Caucus, the Baby's Caucus, the Dad's Caucus are ready to work together and fight for our families. I'm again so grateful for Congressman Tlaib, Congresswoman for our forever approach chair in my mind, Rosa DeLauro, who really is so tenacious, y'all. She never gives up, and that's what I love about her. She'll come into that caucus room. Even when she told me paid leave, talking about paid leave was one of those like, oh, I don't know about like issues. And now, you can't even get, that's what people are talking about all the time, but she came at a time where it wasn't really popular to talk about it. And now we have members of the Senate and Congress right now that offer their staff, and that's wonderful. I welcome that. 12 to 16 weeks or even more to paid leave. They don't want to do it for their residents back home. We gotta do something about it. So again, thank you all so much, all of you being advocates. Many of the moms and the children and families around the country cannot always be here on the Hill to advocate. You all are doing it for them, and so I cannot express my appreciation to all of you. As my mom always says, it took her whole community and neighborhood in front of it. I had not one mother, several mothers tell my mother what I'm doing and where I'm going and everything. Even though we're not on a physical block in Southwest Detroit right now, you all are in many ways the mothers of many children right now that really need a strong voice. So thank you all so much, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your dedication to moms for being here today. We really appreciate it, and we'll get on with so I'll give a brief introduction of like what we're all here today to talk about. And so today's briefing is certainly a featured event for Children's Week, and every year First Focus on Children, our partner organizations, host Children's Weeks during the second full week of June. This celebration is not only to raise awareness and recenter the needs of children in the minds and work of our elected officials, but also an opportunity for the community to come together. And so really pleased today to be here with the Children's Defense Fund 03 to host this event. Making progress for kids is going to take all of us, as Congresswoman said. Administration officials, congressional leaders, advocates, parents, and community members. foundations, teachers, and of course, children themselves. We all often feel that even when there's conversations around children, they're often neglected. You look back at the Parents' Bill of Rights discussion in the House. So education is a children's issue. So often the conversation had nothing to do with it. American voters also agree that we need a strong commitment to our children. In a May 2022 Lake Research Partners poll, by 90 to 8% margin, voters believe that investing in children helps improve their lives, development, and outcomes. And by a 5-to-1 margin, voters believe the federal government is spending too little on funding that benefits children. Together, we will achieve better outcomes for children, and people in this room and watching online are committed to doing so. So I now want to introduce our next guest. Our next speaker has a strong understanding of the impact federal investments can have on children. Rosa Williams serves as director of the Office of Regional Operations at the Administration for Children and Families, where she leads 10 regional offices across the country. Director Williams, thank you so much for being here today and sharing the benefits of ACS programs for children and families. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I am really pleased to be here with you today, and I do appreciate the invitation that we received from the Family Focus, First Focus, 0 to 3 as well, and Children's Defense Fund. We work very closely with a number of organizations that represent families and children across the country. And so we're pleased to be here to kind of share some information about the Administration for Children and Families and some of the work that we do. Actually, I'm here instead of my Deputy Assistant Secretary, Deborah Johnson, who was not able to be here with you all today because she's traveling in Dallas. And so I'm just kind of standing in for her. And but we work very closely together around these issues. As many of you probably know about the Administration for Children and Families, we're responsible for a large number of federal programs that promote the economic and social well-being of children, families, and communities. Our mission is to primarily foster health and well-being by providing federal leadership, working with various partners, and identifying resources for compassionate and effective delivery of human services. We strive to place children and families at the center of our work, wherever we can. We're the second largest operating division of the Department of Human Services and the largest entity working on human services programs. ACF houses about 14 different program offices, which are specialized in their missions, supporting a variety of initiatives and priorities that empower families and individuals, and that also improve access to services. We do that to create strong, healthy families and communities. The breadth of ACS programming includes operating over 60 programs. It allows us to positively impact the lives of children and families and communities around the country. ACF also endeavors to incorporate the voices of people with lived experience. We heard that from Representative Tlaib, and it's important to make sure that we are listening to the voices of the people that are impacted by our programs and services. And it helps us in our policy development and in our practice. Doing cross-program parent engagement groups is one of the things that we're endeavoring to do to make sure that we're hearing those voices. And some of the examples from some of our program offices, for instance, the Office of Family Assistance that has responsibility for the Temporary Assistance to Needy Families program, recently released a toolkit on elevating family input and temporary assistance to needy families and child support programs. You may have heard recently that our child support program, formerly known as the Office of Child Support Enforcement, has evolved in its thinking about the work that they do and is now known as the Office of Child Support Services. And finally, our Children's Bureau that has oversight for child welfare, adoption, and what have you, engages lived experience to inform their policies now by utilizing various consultants with lived experience, and they've set up a birth parent advisory committee as well. In my office, the Office of Regional Operations, we work cross-programmatic and very collaboratively within ACF and with other federal agencies and programs. And we serve as representatives of our Assistant Secretary, January Contreras, in working across the regions in this country. We work closely with human services leaders in states at the local, tribal, and territorial jurisdictional levels to educate and to encourage continual assessment of ways to include whole family approaches to service delivery and support better outcomes for urban families and children. Everything in my office and in the rest of the ACF family, we work on things that are geared around the primary priority areas for Assistant Secretary Contreras. I'm going to talk about 3 of those areas that address the work with families and children and the impact that they have. One area is to increase child and family safety and well-being. For example, the Office of Refugee Resettlement, which resides in the Administration for Children and Families, provides services for entering refugee and asylum families. And doing Operation Allies Welcome, through an interagency agreement between the Office of Refugee Resettlement and the Department of State, entering with Afghanis were provided temporary health coverage, mental health and protection services. A little story, there was a young Afghan boy who came here who had a really bad leg wound and was one of the first arrivals here from Afghanistan. And because he was able to get this temporary health coverage, he was covered and was able to go to the hospital and get services and helped him to be able to continue to walk. And these hospitals were reimbursed for the care that they get. The other thing that we do as a priority is to strengthen the early childhood sector for families. We heard a lot today about child care and Head Start, some of the cuts, and also the great things that happen in those programs for families. The Office of Child Care has been critically important to distributing the American Rescue Plan dollars to states and providing resources to child care providers and families across the country. In all, COVID relief dollars have helped lower child care costs for more than 700,000 children and families. Our child care colleagues support not only families, but also the child care workforce. Our Early Childhood Development Office has a resource page that covers information about best practices and resources available to support compensation and benefits, pathways for career advancement, and working conditions that demonstrate the value of early childhood workforce to our communities. In addition, on May 31st, Early Childhood Development released a Dear Colleague letter about opportunities to support the mental health and well-being of the early childhood and education of the workforce. So we're very engaged across diverse areas that address the needs for families, not only for the children, but also for the folks that provide services to those families. And in February, Department of Health and Human Services announced the creation of a National Early Care and Education Workforce Center. So we're kind of spreading our wings a little bit, looking at those workforce issues that all companies and industries are experiencing across the country, to do what we can to help support the work that we do. We also, the third area is building economic stability and mobility. I don't know if you all are familiar with the Office of Community Services program that resides in ACF, but it provides resources to community-based organizations and other partners to directly increase opportunity and economic security. Their low-income home energy program called Tlaib. Now they have one they call Tlaib, which I think is a horrible name for low-income household water system, but it helps subsidize the cost of important utilities. This year, they also launched a diaper distribution pilot program in 12 states and 2 tribal nations. This pilot connects families with a consistent supply of diapers and other needed resources. Grant recipients and partner organizations will distribute diapers and diapering supplies on a regular basis. And this is being used as an entry point to connect families to address other immediate needs that they may have, but also long-term needs as well. And in my office, our regional leaders annually host convenings about economic stability and mobility, partnering with other federal agencies like the Department of Labor, USDA, U.S. Agricultural Department, and other state and local leaders. And later this summer and into this fall, in all 10 regions across the country, we're going to be hosting events and around issues ranging from benefit cliffs. I'm sure you all are familiar with benefit cliffs. That's the folks who are in the safety net system. They reach a certain level of income or a number of months or years being on assistance and they're no longer eligible. These are cliffs, they fall off. How do we begin to mitigate those? We've been doing a lot of work around this particular subject, and we're actually going to be doing a large meeting soon in November to address it and help better educate folks around what that means and what could possibly be done to mitigate those cliffs. So again, I want to thank you for having me here and sharing about ACF and our work for children and families across this country. Thank you.
So we're really pleased to have Director Williams today. I think that you're not really familiar with all the programs that Administration for Children and Families do. You should really take a look. It's the breadth and depth of the work they do. And the Director Williams can't say this, but it is sometimes it's sad because I feel like ACF is the neglected, part of HHS, and the work they do is so critically important. And we just really thank you for all the outstanding work you guys do at ACF. And also I'll just point out that something else she can't really say, but if you think back to what Congresswoman DeLauro was talking about, right, about the $60 billion in cuts. So much in the budget was exempted, during the State of the Union, Medicare and Social Security, and on and on and on. There's a lot of programs exempted. What's left is children, and what's left is some of these very crucial programs that ACF administers, and those are things that are programs, but then also grants into communities. So into some of you who are on the Hill, those are grants that go into your community. So thank you so much, Director Williams. We really appreciate it. All you're doing. I think all three of our organizations are here to partner any way we can and support the work. So thank you. So 5 minutes.
Yeah. So we want to set up our panel and.
Okay, so Congressman Gomez is going to be, so we'll start, but when he walks in, if you guys can pause and I'll introduce him and then we'll go back to the panel. But anyway, now to sort of, yeah, if you guys can talk. I'm now pleased to introduce today's panel. We will hear from each of our speakers and then open discussion on questions. So first we are joined by my colleague, Michelle Downhill, who's the Senior Vice President of Budget and Tax.
Would you say it like Rosa did?
I like that.
Oh, she did my last.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
That is very awesome. Yeah, absolutely. So Michelle's my colleague, and then Patty Cole is, I've known Patty for years and years, and she's such an awesome advocate, and she's the Senior Director of Federal Policy at 03. And then last but certainly not least is our awesome colleague in our space. I'm Casey Beeks, who's the Director of Federal Policy at the Children's Defense Fund. So thank you all for being here, and also, I guess, Michelle.
Yeah, I'm going to start off. Time myself, and I'm not going to get done in 5 minutes, Haley, so I'm ready to pause. So thank you, Bruce, for introducing us all. Thank you all for being here. So I've been working on First Focus since the end of 2017, and I work on budget and tax policy. And one of the major things where I focus is the production of our signature report, which is the annual children's budget report that we put out. And this year, Patty will talk more about this, but we have been partnering with 03 to put out a baby's budget as well. Captures the funding on our youngest and one. So everything was set up really well for us because you heard from all the speakers so far, all the different programs across the entire policy landscape that come together to really build a strong social safety net for kids and families. And so I'm just going to give a little bit of background on the budget book and then give some preliminary numbers. So I'm going to get a little wonky on you guys in terms of where we are and the share of federal spending on kids. So the book covers over 250 different programs across 13 different departments, including EPA and that, so 13 different departments. And it's both international and domestic, and we look at both mandatory and discretionary spending. And we have a fact sheet, I don't know if it's on the chair, if you all picked it up. But our initial analysis will show, if you're looking at the top chart there, that the spending trend has not been good, and historically children have not been receiving their fair share. And in fact, in 2020, we did an all-time low of about 7.4%. That's 7.4% of the federal share of spending on kids. Then you'll see in 2021, we got a bump up to about 12%, and it went a little bit higher in 2022. And as you might imagine, that was largely driven by the COVID incident and the COVID crisis and the economic fallout. But I also would say, we've heard from a number of them, champions, were huge advocates in ensuring in the omnibus spending bills that the funding stayed up to support all the growing needs of kids. And so what we're finding now for 2023, we're going to see it drop back down, unfortunately. So that is not the direction we want to be going. We've already heard from Congressman DeLauro that we are really in it. Continue to fight as we go through some tough battles here for FY24 and potentially even the supplemental for FY23. Then if you look at the second chart that we have here, it's the overall domestic spending, and you will see that year-to-year decline, since FY21. So dropping nearly 19% from 21 to 22, and then nearly 17% from 22 to 23. So we're going in the wrong direction when the needs of kids are certainly growing. And then on the back of that, you will see the kids' share of discretionary spending. And we put that there particularly because of what's going on in Congress right now, but also because kids' programs are disproportionately discretionary. Over 80% of the programs practical are discretionary. The mandatory dollar amount is high, but the number of programs that are under annual review and based on cuts, about 80% of the programs are kids. And so you can see, again, we hit a high there of about 15, almost 14% in 2021, 22 it dropped notably, and we're going to see it come back down under 8% again in 2023. These are preliminary analysis, but that's what we're looking at, and this is a perfect stopping point to welcome the Congressman. Yeah, we've thrown a bunch of numbers at you.
All right, so I want to, it's my pleasure to introduce Congressman Jimmy Gomez. So an awesome champion for kids, and I last saw him before yesterday at the White House one time. So he brought his son Hodge to the event. How do I take pictures? It's like, oh my God, I take my pictures. And so he gave me the number and my phone number. So then when I met with Ben, I hopefully got that. Thank you. No, absolutely. So anyway, so very much a pleasure that Congressman Gomez is here. And as chair of the Dad's Caucus, he's shown such an awesome commitment to advancing important policies that provide support for families and reducing child poverty, early childhood, a whole array of issues that are important to kids. And also, I just want to say also, just as the staff of Congresswoman DeLauro and Tlaib are amazing. So is we're huge fans of Ben and the staff of your staff as well. So anyway, so thank you so much, Congressman. It's great to have you. Yeah,
I appreciate it. Thank you. First, let me just thank you just for having me here today. It's a pleasure. This is Children's Week, and I want to thank First Caucus on Children 0 to 3 and the Children's Defense Fund for bringing us together. I'm not sure if people know this is a very historic moment taking place right here in the Library of Congress. This is the first time we're bringing together what we call the new Caucus. The dads, the mamas, and the baby caucuses all in one room. So that it is a moment because it actually acknowledges that this is an issue that is no longer just defined by for mothers, right? For kids. It is an issue that's defined by all of us in this room. There is a concept out there, it's called the default parenting, where mothers are often considered the default parent when it comes to a variety of things. If the baby gets sick, who takes the baby to the doctor? It's the mother. If a kid has to go miss school, who picks up the child from school? That's the mother. And they're often the ones that are leaving the workplace, leaving whatever they're doing to take it up that slack. The default parent, we have to fight against it, and that's why we form one of the reasons we formed the Dad's Caucus. But it's also we have to fight against the notion of default legislating, that only mothers or women are the ones that are supposed to be working on paid family leave, a child tax credit, child care, any issues that deal with babies and families. That's a women's issue. Right? We got to get away from that notion of default legislating that only women should do it, and that men need to kind of step up and do our part to advocate for these pieces of legislation. If it was only just women who are mothers in Congress, well, it would be a lot less voices at the table. So men joining is going to be a powerful, powerful thing. And we know the statistics. Paid family leave, if we had it, we know what the benefits going to have for mothers and reducing postpartum depression, helping babies have better health outcomes in the short and medium and long term. But it also benefits dads, and dads being involved. Also, you see the tremendous impacts. And additionally, when it comes to the child tax credit that Rosa DeLauro has been a champion on, she's been a champion on all these issues. And we want to help, we acknowledge her expertise and everything that she's done, and everybody in this room that's helped her out over the years. But she also championed the child tax credit, and it had a profound impact. Reduced child poverty, as everybody says, 40–60%. But if people start thinking of how many families were using it, they would be able to give a monthly payment that they could put towards food, towards childcare, to pay rent, to basic utilities. That really reduced the stress on families. And that reduction in stress also helped, of course, the babies in the household. I used to always think my mom was just, she was kind of mean when I was growing up. And I thought it was because she was just inherently mean. No, she was mean because she was tired and stressed out because she worked 3–4 jobs a week to make ends meet. I would be stressed out if I worked those kind of jobs. So helping families reduce that financial pressure changes the game, especially within a family context. And then we do better, our families do better, our communities do better, our state does better, and our economy does better. But we do have something on childcare. Childcare is a big impact, not only for what happens with children, but now when it comes to families' financial positions. Families are paying anywhere from 20–26% of their income towards childcare. And then when you add in the average family now pays almost 30% or more towards rent and mortgages. Two things in a family's budget are impacting impacting their financial outlook, which create 60%. Think about that. Two things take up 60%. That creates stresses and creates unnecessary burdens that I think hurt that family. So we got to tackle these issues, but we're going to make these issues bigger. We're going to make sure that we prioritize babies and mothers and families in the budget, and we're going to push back against any kind of cuts that we keep facing. I believe in an activist government. I believe that government has a role, and I think all of you do too, or you wouldn't be here, because there are certain things that only government can do, and especially when it comes to the lowest income individuals in this country. So we're working, but I'm learning a lot from all these organizations for everything that you're doing. I've ever since I left, I brought my son Hodge to the House floor. I'm greeted as where's Hodge? That's the greeted, again. But I've learned from those individuals that took an interest in my son, took an interest in the Dad's Caucus, that there is so much to do. And we've been laying the groundwork for years, and hopefully us dads can play a small role in that. So I want to just thank all of you for being here. Next year, I guarantee you, childcare will be on one of the top agenda items in the presidential race, guaranteed. Because we're setting the groundwork, we're beating that drum. And then we're gonna also make sure that children are not left behind. But it's not gonna be easy. There's some people that believe in a small federal government, that believe that it only should be for national defense, and everything else should be pushed off to the side of the table. But I'm a Democrat, we don't believe that. So we're gonna work with all these organizations that have been here, fighting the good fight for years. And then we're gonna make sure that the next generation, when we accomplish these goals, picks up the baton and carries on this fight. So thank you guys for having me. I'm gonna be going home. I'm gonna be doing my fair share of the work. My wife has 3 days of straight night duty, and I have 3 days of straight night duty when I get home. It's okay, but I know how to get him to sleep. But I just want to say thank you all for just inviting me to be here. My staff is here to help you, and we're going to coordinate our efforts, and we're going to get these big issues done. So thank you so much. Right.
We really short on time.
Go ahead, you guys.
I was just gonna go off a couple of things that we've already heard here, particularly from DeLauro, and her point about what has come out of the appropriations in terms of the sub-allocations. They are grim. We have a fight on our hands. We've seen already with the agricultural bill on the House side, a significant cut to the WIC program. We're cutting back the fresh fruit and vegetable benefit for kids by almost 60%. I don't know if you know, Mr. President, when you buy fruit these days. So we are in a fight. We're looking at nearly, where are my numbers here? Close to a 30% cut for labor HHS and over a 25% cut for both transportation and interior environment subcommittees for their allocations. So it's good to hear the groundswell of support and to see you all here today, because I think if we're working together, we make a difference, and we've got a fight on our hands, but I feel as if we're ready to fight that fight. And then I'll turn it over to Patty to talk about our toddlers.
Thanks. And I just want to thank First Caucus and Children's Fund for partnering on the briefing and for all of you coming. And I am just going to pick up and echo what Michelle just said, is when you look at the appropriations numbers, this briefing can come at a better time when we got these kids. And those bills are talking about actually disinvestment in kids. And so it's really important to look at where kids are in the budget and where they need to be, or where they could be going. So I'm going to talk about the baby budget, but I want to spend a few minutes talking about why it matters so much that we use the power of the federal budget to ensure that every infant or toddler has what they need to reach their potential. And it matters because development in the first 3 years sets the stage for everything that follows. And when we're born, we have millions of neurons, but they're not connected to each other. And this connection happens after babies are born, and so we think of it as baby learning. But it creates the connections at a rate of 1 million per second, and those connections form responses to the experiences babies have, and the inputs they receive in the form of whether their parents have the economic means to be not stressed and to care for them, whether they live in a safe house or whether they're in crowded housing, do they breathe clean air or breathe in toxic chemicals, or as you heard we talk about, do they have lead in their water that's coming into those tiny bodies that they can process. And when babies don't get healthy and nurturing inputs, their development can be undermined in ways that last a lifetime. And we know that there are inequities across access to resources, and that starts with financial stability. I think that a lot of policymakers might be surprised to learn that 2 out of every 5 babies and toddlers live in families with low income, and about half of those are in outright poverty. That is a pretty consequential group. But we also know that there is that inequities are stark in income, that for Black and Native American infants and toddlers, it's 3 in 5 live in families with low income. And for Hispanic infants and toddlers, it's 1 of every 2 lives in families with low income. So much economic deprivation takes a toll for both the babies and for the potential that our country desperately needs. And so they're like have a great likelihood of living in crowded houses, having more adverse experiences, and less family resilience. So the federal budget, and I'm going to get there, the federal budget touches on all of these needs that I mentioned. So you can think of it as providing the inputs that infants and toddlers need for their healthy development. And it helps smooth out some of those inequities. So our report that's going to come out the end of this month or next month, the full report, and you have the short fact sheet, looks at the programs that fall within 0 to 3's policy agenda of good health, strong families, and positive early learning experiences. And I think about half of the programs that Michelle mentioned in the big kids budget are actually also touch infants and toddlers. And the problem is that while there is great reach, it doesn't do enough in many cases. So infants and toddlers make up 3.4% of the population, but only 1.7% of the federal budget in 2023 was devoted to meeting babies' needs. And it went up during the pandemic, but it's never reached more than 2%. So even just looking at that point of comparison, the budget falls short. But when you think about the foundational development that's taking place, and the fact that economists, not just baby huggers, but economists, have demonstrated that the greatest return on investment comes from investing in the first 3 years, precisely because this foundation pays off in the long run with better school success and higher earnings, and even improved adult health. So when we look from that perspective, the baby share seems very short-sighted indeed. And in many programs, we know that the federal funding falls short. Early Head Start, which thanks to Congresswoman DeLauro has expanded dramatically over the past 20 years or so, only reaches 11% of eligible children. And we hear about childcare and the big body of budgets, but only 5% of low and moderate income families that can really benefit from actually receive it. So there is a lot of work to do. And I just want to mention a couple of things. So we've done polling as well. And almost 90% of families, parents of infants and toddlers, think that infants and toddlers and the needs of children overall should be a top priority in the budget. And they're very concerned about cuts, and they know that it's going to impact them. But I also want to bring, and I think it's really important to look at the families behind the numbers, and it's really important to bring them in. We're bringing 51 of them to Capitol Hill next week. We're still in thunder. But when we were doing our federal policy agenda, we met with our family advocacy network, and we asked them for their input on what their needs were and talk about the challenges and the mental health stresses they've been facing. So one parent talked about how paying for the quality childcare her baby deserved that she was lucky to find, but it meant either turning down the heat in their house or buying unhealthy foods because they're cheaper, or getting only the most essential health care. And others pointed out the inequities that if you tell me your zip code, I can tell you what you have access to good housing or early learning programs. And one of them talked about the pandemic and said, you know, it just exposed the gaps and the cracks that were there already. And then it's just all crumbled for so many families. And these are the families for whom the baby share is so important. So at the end, we asked them what message they wanted to send Congress and the president. And one mom spoke up and she said, you know, my biggest thing is fight for our families. Not to push them aside, not to make them a low priority, but to fight for them. And that became the title of our policy agenda, and that's our ask today. We were heard of. The congressional leaders talked about how they are fighting for families and all of you as well. It's going to take all of us to win this fight. Thank you. I'm going to pass it to Katie.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon and happy Children's Week. My name is Casey Peaks and I am the Director of Federal Policy at the Children's Defense Fund. I started back in February, and prior to that, I was a professional staff member on the committee for Education and Labor under Congressman Bobby Scott, where I handled child welfare issues as well as early childhood education. And then even prior to that, I was a kindergarten teacher for 4 years in the Lubbock area. So children are what's most important to me at my core, and I understand what these investments look like on the ground level. I know what it looks like when a child goes to school hungry. I know what it looks like when a child doesn't have a safe place to go at the end of the school day. And so these investments are really important at a real lived experience level. And at the Children's Defense Fund, we're really interested in that holistic well-being of a child. We understand what it means to have access to healthy nutrition, access to safe and quality housing, access to quality schools. And these are really complex issues, and there's no silver bullet. But as Congresswoman DeLauro said, the child tax credit comes as close to a silver bullet as we've ever seen. Access to food and housing is exacerbated when we have poverty, and the child tax credit that we saw with the American Rescue Plan cut child poverty in half, which is the closest thing we've seen to a silver bullet in terms of improving outcomes for children in America's history. So in terms of where we're at in terms of child poverty in America, Children's Defense Fund recently released our State of America's Child Report, which is our annual report. And we found that of the 74 million children living in this country, about 11 million are living in poverty. That is morally indefensible and unacceptable for a country with so much wealth and power as the United States to have that many children living in poverty, especially when we know that there are tools available to cut that in half. But these parents that are raising these children are burdened with racism, classism, and systematic barriers to providing for their children in the ways they need. And of those 11 million children living in poverty, most of them are children under 5. And as Patricia mentioned, like those are really important years for brain development. So knowing that we have an issue with child poverty in this country, CDF worked with CSSP, the Center on the Study for Social Policy, to create the Automatic Benefit for Children Coalition, which is a group of grassroots organizations, national organizations, state organizations that are working to get a child allowance so that we can see these outcomes for children be improved. And one of the most powerful parts of that coalition is that we have a parent and caregiver advisory board. So we have a set of parents who are working with us to tell us what they need from a lived experience perspective, because we know that's really important. Like you hear these numbers and data, and that's important, but we also need to make sure that these policies are informed by the parents who are struggling in poverty day after day. And what these parents told us is that from a child tax credit, what is most important to them is that it reaches all children, regardless of immigration status, regardless of income. The child tax credit needs to meet and serve all children in this country. It needs to be monthly, because when it's monthly and it doesn't come at the end of the year in the form of tax credit, when it comes monthly, that's when we see parents using it for housing. We see them using it for food. We see them using it for school supplies. And we have this fact sheet that you can grab on your way out that has information on how parents spend their money that they receive from the child tax credit and the American Rescue Plan. So all that to say is that we know that there's a way to cut child poverty, and we know that these outcomes that we're seeing for children are indefensible. But we also know that these programs that Michelle talked about, those can't go away either. We need to have them working hand in hand. The child tax credit is a layer of support on top of those. SNAP will work better if parents have CTC SNAP. WIC will work better. Housing credits will work better if parents have access to these additional resources. And I know that it is the Invest in Kids grouping that we're at, but I just want to close that this is really about investing in America. You cannot think that we're going to be competitive on the national stage when we have 11 million children from poverty. 11 million children who don't have access to what they need to be successful later on in life. If you care about the economic future of this country, if you care about our military capabilities, I come at from a moral obligation to do these things, but if you are more motivated by the economic, we cannot be competitive when we have this many children living in poverty. And earlier this week at another children's event, Senator Booker said that children are our country's most valuable natural Like when we invest in children, as Rosa said, we get a $7 return on investment for every dollar we invest in children. Like this is an investment in children. From a moral standpoint, we can't have children going hungry every day. We can't. But we also can't think that we're going to be able to compete on an international level when we're not doing everything we can to better our children.
Thank you all. I think we don't have a ton of time for questions, but if anyone who has sort of a pressing question, and then also our panelists are certainly available, you know, anyone wants to talk to them, but does anyone have sort of something they really want to ask? All right, well, they're available, and also, you know, I would say, I normally don't speak on behalf of all of us, but I would say that from First Focus on Children 0 to 3, children's defense fund, we really appreciate also presence here today, and also, you know, call on any of us. I mean, we all have resources, I think, that we as a community go out of our way to sort of give the evidence. All of them gave awesome numbers about the importance of investing in kids. And so call on us. We're happy to be helpful. Just another note, like this is Children's Week, and I think Congressman Caucus really hit. It's the first time these 3 caucuses have come together, which is very exciting. But also Congresswoman Jacobs is going to introduce legislation at some point soon to basically enshrine this week as Children's Week, the 2nd week in June. So some of you in various offices would like to support that. That would be fantastic. Any other last comments from our awesome panel?
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, feel free to ask questions. I do this.